Welcome everyone to Exploring Barwon today, and thanks for joining us. For those that have come for the first time, Exploring Barwon is a joint place-based initiative between the two departments, Department of Families, Fairness and Housing, and my department, Department of Justice and Community Safety. My name is Georgia Quill, and I'm the General Manager of Community Services in the Barwon Southwest region. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're all meeting on today, and I am living and working on the land of the Wadawurrung people. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, elders of other lands that participants are on, and any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us online today. I acknowledge the continuing living culture of Aboriginal people. I've got the pleasure, of course, of reminding everyone of our basic online housekeeping requirements. As we streamline the process of Exploring Barwon, we've now we've set all attendees to have their microphones and cameras disabled for the session, and you'll also see that we're recording the session with the intention of making it available to participants in the future, fingers crossed. Thanks also to everyone who took the opportunity to submit your questions for the session during the registration process. We've provided the questions to our presenter and they've incorporated those into their presentation. But while you're here today, today's session will cover the basic principles of money management and financial literacy for our clients. At a time when we're seeing a major surge in cost of living and pressures, it is those that are living in financial stress who often feel it the most. And although GDP is rebounded and showing strong growth, the number of people reporting financial stress has actually risen to 31%. And that now exceeds the number of people who are actually making ends meet, which currently sits at 26%, interestingly enough. We all know that money worries is one of the major sources of stress in Australia, and it can lead to relationship problems, depression and anxiety. Poor financial literacy can also lead to poor life choices, and these life choices can create or contribute to financial stress with adverse consequences. On the upside, which is why we're here, research has indicated that incorporating financial counselling and financial literacy into case management and support can assist in moderating the impact of financial stress and even homelessness. We hope today that our speaker can provide you with the knowledge and strategies to inform your work when working with clients to increase their financial literacy and better respond to the pressures being felt in the current economic climate. On that note, I'd now like to introduce Annette Devereaux from the Give Where You Live Foundation. Many of you may already be familiar with Annette. She's a highly experienced financial counsellor in our region, and more recently is leading an important project at Give Where You Live on increasing confidence for workers on financial capability, and importantly, providing easy tools for them to use some financial capability work with their clients. More recently, some of you may also be aware that Annette has recently joined the Geelong Food Relief Network as our network coordinator. Please join me in welcoming Annette to Exploring Barwon today.
Thanks, Georgia, and thanks for having us along here. So we'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the country throughout Australia. Sorry, I'll just swap my slide over. So feel free to put in the chat which country you're in. I'm actually in the Wadawurrung country at the moment. We recognise the loss of the lands and culture, knowing the consequences for people and communities and nations. We pay our respects to First Nations elders, both past and present, and acknowledge that sovereignty over these lands and waters has never been ceded. So thank you for that warm welcome. I have been a financial counsellor for quite a while. It feels like forever, and I'm really passionate about the role financial capability and financial counselling can have on the people that we work with in our region. So I worked at Bethany Community Support for 13 years, and I've recently left there early this year to take on some new tasks and projects. So when I was at Bethany Community Support, I also was the team leader and managed the emergency relief, financial capability and financial counselling programs across the Wimmera and Barwon Southwest regions. So I am doing some work still in the sector, but not at Bethany anymore. So I'm doing some teaching and I'm doing some project work, which is where this fabulous project comes in for Give Where You Live. So the project that we're going to focus on, and I have incorporated the questions that we did get prior to the session, which is fabulous. The questions were amazing, so thank you for that. If any other questions do come up, then please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll see them and respond to them throughout the session, but also at the end. We've got some time for questions at the end. So the Give Where You Live, so the project itself, the Give Where You Live Foundation and Geelong Community Foundation partnered in July 2020, along with the extra building financial capability grant, which enabled us to look at our local region and the financial capacity of people accessing services. We knew that there was a really high demand for financial support in our region, and we wanted to understand that a little bit more. So the project itself, so phase one focused on understanding the client's needs and how they access and use existing tools, and also the resources and the services that are available. Gaps were identified in the available tools and the resources that are in the region. And we also found that vulnerable people in the G21 region were identified as receiving government benefits, in particular the aged and disability and carer support pensions, as well as the job seeker benefits. We also knew that they had unstable employment, including casuals, families on single income, etc. Precarious family and social situations, including single parents, also impacted by family violence and family breakdown, or major health and medical illnesses created that vulnerability. And also in our region, people exiting from the corrections or the prison systems, and elders experiencing financial abuse had a real impact on people. So as well as the particular vulnerabilities that were identified in the G21 region as being further risk to vulnerability was sexual assault and family violence, enmeshed in poverty, and the inability to access and navigate some fairly complex systems in our financial counselling, food relief and emergency relief systems. We know that there was a lot of unplanned and multiple large bills, and there's also a lot of trauma and addiction. The big one over the last couple of years is the impact of what COVID has had on our region as well. So the findings looked at the service system and the complexities, and certainly looked at it from a client's point of view of how to navigate the service system around financial support for themselves. And one of the gaps that were identified was the early intervention phase for people experiencing vulnerabilities. So phase two researched the tools and the websites and resources that were currently available to staff and clients in our region, and whether we could utilise these at a local level, or why aren't they being used effectively. And there's a lot of resources around, but actually having them within our sort of catchment area was really difficult. So all those points resulted in phase three of this project now. So phase three, so client responses, some of the recommendations or the client responses that were contained in the recommendation point was the wait times for financial counselling assistance in the region varied from between anything from 4 to 8 weeks, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, but never stable in terms of accessing services. Any financial capability or financial literacy building programs that are dependent on funding, and they're not often ongoing. They might be a 3 or a 6 month project around financial capability. Emergency relief and food aid programs do a really amazing job with the resources that they have, but they're often a short term or a crisis solution to a longer term problem. And knowing referral processes and access points to obtain financial support services varies from agencies to agencies. So for clients, the knowledge of the broader service system and support system is often difficult, and changes with funding variations, with staff changes and with wait lists as well. So this is where phase 3 did come in, and that's the phase that we're doing at the moment. So there's 2 recommendations that we're working on from the report around that. So the first one, Give Where You Live Foundation and the Geelong Community Foundation acknowledged the recommendations, and the 2 phases that we're looking at is one that's up on your screen at the moment, which is the Volunteering Geelong project. And they're currently undertaking a financial capability project, which is a one-to-one service for clients using trained volunteers to support people to increase their financial capability skills. So certainly not financial counselling, but financial capability skills. This will support people to better understand their financial circumstances and have mentoring support to set their own financial goals, to create a budget, and to improve the management of their bill paying systems. The financial capability program with Volunteering Geelong can also better refer clients to the financial counselling within our region, with more appropriate referrals that are tailored to their financial counselling needs. So the second recommendation from the project is the one that I'm working on at the moment, or just started working on with Give Where You Live. And it's called Money Talks, or that's the name that we're going with at the moment. So it's called Money Talks, and it's a project of providing support and education to frontline workers to have the conversation about money with their clients, and if the client is having a difficult time, how to assist them with some simple financial tasks. Another aspect of that program is to also do some simple and successful referrals to the local financial counsellors and support services around, and supporting clients with other resources, particularly within our region, such as emergency aid, food aid, and material aid. So we have a little poll now. I think Sam's going to run the poll for me. So we just wanted to know how difficult it is to actually ask your clients if they are wondering about their financial circumstances, or how to have that question. And if you could give that a quick answer, and we'll just have a look at the results. Lots of people are saying yes. That's great. So I think we've got everyone that's answered, which is great. So 61% said that they do feel comfortable asking their clients about their financial circumstances, which is great. I know that we do have a few financial capability and financial counselling colleagues on the presentation today, so hopefully that's you saying that you've got some you're comfortable about that. But there's a couple of you who have said that you're unsure and also that you're not comfortable asking the question, so thanks for sharing that information. I'll just go to the next slide. So sometimes it is hard to have a conversation. Sometimes it's hard enough to have that with ourselves or our loved ones, let alone asking clients. And if you're able to ask the question about if someone's struggling with their finances, knowing what to do with that information once they've said yes, it's often, what do I do? How do I refer people on in those circumstances? So the project itself is going to be a couple of different phases within this phase 3 program. But the Give Where You Live Foundation, we're developing up a couple of website pages, which is being designed by Good Shepherd. Good Shepherd provides a variety of financial independence and financial capability programs, and the website itself is going to be available in late May after we've done some user testing. So what we hope is the web pages will have prompters and conversation starters for frontline workers if you want to start to have a conversation about money. So Money Talks will focus on building the confidence of frontline workers. We weren't born with our money skills. We learnt them through our generations, through our families, through our mates, through employment, through society, through marketing and media, more so these days. And so we know that if our values and our ideas aren't serving us well in relation to our financial circumstances, we can adapt them to better suit and update our goals in that. But sometimes we need support to do this. So asking questions of clients can be difficult and also awkward. But I think the more that you ask the questions, are your finances okay? Or I'm just wondering, it seems like there's some financial pressure on you at the moment, the easier asking and hearing for their responses will become. This is the same for those difficult questions around spending habits, for example, gambling habits. And that was certainly one of the questions that came to us before the presentation. So how to ask those questions. And it's really, as I said, just asking it in a more general sense and including it as your everyday conversation. So doing a general budget, for example, and including gambling as a form of expenses. So how much do you spend on tax lotto tickets or on pokies, for example, is a natural way to weave it into the conversation. You could also ask, what about other social activities that you do? So such as going to the movies, or do you go to the pokies, or how much do you spend on pokies around that? So that could be a way of introducing the subject, and also letting a client know that it's actually okay to ask, and it's also okay to for the client to respond. It can be a safe, and also can be done in a non-judgmental way. So no doubt that you'll learn some tips and supports that will be useful for you and your family from the website, and also the presentation set for the future. Sharing this information with clients will be easier with the resources available in one location and relevant to our local community here. For example, what we're hoping is doing a budget with a client. That can be really difficult to do, and it can be a confronting task. But sometimes the website's going to focus on taking it in stages with the client, and also supporting the client to complete it without judgment is also a good place to start for people who aren't so comfortable with asking questions around people's finances. We need to, in doing a budget, it's often a difficult word or subject to get your head around. So, but I think we all need to do a budget at some point to understand what our expenses are and what our income is. And so hopefully our income is a little bit more than what our expenses are. And the only way you're really going to know that is if you do a budget at least once. So we're not certainly recommending that people do budgets every week, although if they'd like to do that, then that would be great. But budgets are really difficult for people to do. So at least doing one is a good idea to see what you're just spending around that. One of the other questions that came up in relation to budgets and was focused on young people and what was available for young people in talking about those financial options for people aged between 12 and 18 years. So it just so happens that the federal government just recently launched a website designed for young people. It's called Money Management, and you can find that at moneymanage.gov.au. And that's looking at spending and saving habits for young people. It looks at opening up a bank account and getting debit cards and what to look for that. It also looks at debt and how young people can get into debt, and bad decisions that can happen from decisions that are made around possibly impulse buying for young people. So if you're interested further, certainly it's just been launched, I believe, this week. So have a look at that. It's called moneymanage.gov.au, and there'll be some great resources in that if you're working with young people in particular and around their finances. So The third point, so effective referrals to services. We have some absolutely great services in the Geelong region and the surrounding areas, but knowing how to refer, or knowing that the services are there in the first place, and how to refer your client, what the criteria is of that service in terms of their ability to assist, and also how the service can assist that, and how say a financial counsellor or emergency relief worker would work with people. It's important to know. So we're hoping that the website, well, we know that the website will have lots of really valuable and useful information on there about links to emergency relief and financial capability services, but also the financial counselling services in our area. We're also going to have some links to some grants and other government supports that are available. So rather than having to go into different websites all the time to find information, we're going to have links in the one website, which again, the focus is on the local area. So making sure that we're covering off those local services. One of the questions that came through was, could you list the financial counselling services in our region? And we can certainly do that, and that will be in the information on the website. But I'd be suggesting to people the best place to start, if you're thinking that you've got a client that you're working with that's got some financial issues, ask them to call the National Debt Helpline, and their number is 1800 007 007. Again, National Debt Helpline, and that's staffed by financial counsellors, so across Australia. So financial counsellors will pick up the phone, and they've got an online chat function as well on their website. And that's probably the first point of call for someone who you might be working with, who might be struggling with their finances. So financial counsellors can have a conversation with the client over the phone, or with yourself as the frontline worker, and give you some tips and hints on how to work with that person. If they feel that that person would do better working with someone in a face-to-face capacity or within their local service, the National Debt Helpline will refer internally to the local services in our Geelong region. And so that's a really good way, particularly if there's a wait list for services, that's a really good way to get the helpline to prioritise and assess what the need of the client is, and then to refer them into those local services for supports and assistance. But as I said, frontline workers can also use those contacts, and the National Debt Helpline website is a really good resource for people as well. So we are going to put some more information on the website. As I said, it's just being developed at the moment to highlight what the services and supports are around those referrals into our local agencies and supports for our clients. So at the moment, we've just got some draft starters for the website. So as I said, these are just talking points at the moment, though it'll certainly be developed a bit further around that. But it's going to have, the website itself is going to have some simple to use functions for workers to access for their the work that they're doing for their clients. So it's not necessarily designed for clients themselves, but they'll certainly get benefit if they're looking at the website themselves. But it's designed for workers to help and to guide them in their direction of that financial capability. So on there, we're going to have some information about how to have the conversation, how to resolve some fairly simple financial issues. For example, assisting a client or knowing about a utility relief grant and what that is in terms of the support that's available, how to access it, and where to find that information. So links to the concessions pages will be on that. We'll also have information about the energy saving bonus, which has been extended. So that's a $250 bonus for people with their energy use. So links to those sorts of great resources will be on that website as well. We'll have the easy to access referral pathways for more complex issues, and also suggestions on how to complete a referral to a financial counselling service that's most effective for the client to obtain the service that they need through that financial counselling program, and for the agency to understand what the complexities are of that client. We have in the past, through our service system with financial counselling, had referrals that we've had to spend a lot of time with the client just assessing what their needs are. But given the workers in, say, family violence programs or housing programs are already gathering that information. Knowing what you can and can't include on a referral form will be really valuable to people and ultimately to clients, to making sure that they don't have to repeat their information too many times. So prompts are going to be available on the website to support the client to phone the energy company, for example, for themselves, and what to say to the energy company, and how to ask for a repayment arrangement or a utility relief grant, those sorts of things. Same with the telco and the credit providers. We'll have some tips on how to ask for assistance and how clients can do that themselves. Or if the client's not feeling confident around that, how you as a worker can support the client and possibly do that with the client in the room at the same time. So the client's learning those skills and how you engage with other providers and how you advocate on their behalf, and you use assertive, strengths-based communication with them. So the desired outcomes for the client is things like payment arrangements, getting concessions added to accounts, making sure that concessions are staying on accounts, certainly energy accounts, and reviews of the plans that people are on already in terms of their energy or their telecommunications contracts and things that they're doing. So we'll have some talking points around that on the website that would just make it easier for you to have those conversations with those credit providers, or for the client to do them themselves. We'll ensure that the information provided is accurate and current, and we're engaging with the local service providers to make sure that the web pages are correct, and we'll keep checking those links to make sure that they're correct and keep adding information as it comes on. So for example, the energy saving bonus was due to finish, but it was extended, so we'll make sure that that remains current on the website that Give Where You Live that you're going to be hosting. We'll also ensure that any other links to other community pages, which include state and federal government and supporter organisations such as Money Smart website or the National Debt Helpline, are providing frontline workers with the most relevant and up-to-date information to support their clients. And most of those websites that we use in our sector in financial capability, emergency relief and financial counselling are really easy to read and to understand. So that's what we're hoping that we'll follow through with that and just make it a really simple website for you to access. So these are just a sample of some of the services and the links that will be present on the website. We will have some links and these will be updated often, and as I said, we can add to them all the time around this. So, but there's just so much information that we do want to include. We just want to make sure that we're not overloading people as well. So yeah, but these will be just some of the information that will be available on our local G21 website, which is exciting. So as the website is still being developed, we have unfortunately had a delay in rolling the project out. It has been a little while coming. And so the role that I'm doing as a consultant with Give Where You Live is starting this, and that's the conversation today with this presentation. But also it gives us time to make sure that the links and the information that we're going to put on the website is the most relevant, and we can do some user testing around that as well. I'm also going to be meeting with a lot of the services, and I've started that already to make sure that we are doing current information and that we're using those local services in the referral forms that they want to use, and to make sure that we're supporting those local services as much as we can around that. So we are going to be hosting a number of presentations in the G21 region. They will be face-to-face, and there'll also be online options around that. The presentations themselves will be fairly similar to this in terms of length. So there'll be 30 minutes, around 30 minutes, so not too onerous around that. And we'll guide you through the website itself on how to ask the question initially and what to do with that information, and then to decide, working alongside your client, whether they need some emergency relief or some financial capability, such as the Volunteering Geelong project, or more comprehensive and complex support, such as the financial counselling that's available in the region. So we'll talk you through that when we do the presentation. We'll take you around the website and we'll guide you through that, and we'll get support and direction from you guys in terms of how it's working. It's designed for you to use, so we want to make sure that it's really user friendly on that. So I will be in contact with lots of services. We are going to be focusing initially on the homelessness sector, and neighbourhood centres and houses, and also job network providers in terms of the rollout of our presentations. But if you're working in another service and you would like us to do a presentation to your staff team or your office, then or your volunteers in the organisation that you work in, then we're more than happy to do that as well, because we really want to make sure that this website and the resources that we're going to be developing are catering for the needs of yourselves. Through the report and the research that has been done over the last couple of years, which a lot of organisations present here today have had input into, we know that we do have some really great services here, but the referral pathways, or knowing what we actually do and how we do it, or how we could benefit clients, can be very complex. So we want to make it as user-friendly as possible. And we want it to have that G21 Geelong and region focus around that. So if you'd like to find out more or book a presentation, then please give me a call or email us, and I can certainly do that. I'm more than happy to come out and do some presentations with you, and also do some further training if you did want some more information around how to ask the question or supports and services within the region. Then I do, after 13 years, have a lot of knowledge within this sector, and being in Geelong, there's great services, and I know a lot about them, particularly with the food network area and the food relief centre, which is I'm beginning to understand, which is really amazing work that those unique agencies do around that. So we did have some really great questions. There was a couple that I couldn't incorporate into the presentation, so I've just added them in here, and we'll get to further questions if there are any in a minute. But somebody asked about small loans besides meals and what's available in the area. To be honest, I really struggled to answer that, because it is difficult in terms of getting a small loan for somebody, particularly someone that may have some credit defaults and things. So Niels, and I know this person said besides Niels does have a great range of, Niels is a no interest loan scheme, and they do have a great range of products now. So they do a Niels for cars loan, which is up to $5,000. They do a family violence household relief loan, and they also do household items. So if you've referred clients for a no interest loan previously and it's only been up to say $800 or $1,200, there are different options these days. So have a look at Niels, even though it is a Niels loan, have a look at Niels and see if that's an option for you. Ultimately, what we do want people to try and do, and as a broader community, is we want people to have an emergency fund, so a little bit of savings tucked aside in case the fridge does break down, or you need to purchase something in an emergency. I know that's a really difficult concept, and it's hugely challenging for many people, but it ultimately we do. If we can get people starting to think about savings, even if it's just $5 a week or $5 a fortnight, and putting it in an account that they have difficulty accessing, then that can start building up. And so that person may not need a small loan because they might have some funds for themselves. There's also a couple of other options there. So Uniting Care recently has an escaping violence payment, which is up to $5,000. So if you Google Uniting Care around that, there'll be some information about that. And in our sector, we also use things such as the Queen's Fund, which are grants that are available for people in vulnerable positions. So that was one of the questions around that. Another question was around hidden poverty, the working poor, and how our services and supports supporting these people. COVID has changed our landscape in terms of the referrals coming in for emergency relief, financial capability and financial counselling. And we know that there are a lot of people who are struggling, but are continuing to work. So all I can suggest with that is that we need to acknowledge that it's really difficult for a lot of people to make ends meet. Services Australia, so if people aren't eligible for any Services Australia income or concession cards, they may be entitled to a low income card, concession card. So have a look at that. So even if they're not going to get a Centrelink benefit, they might still get a healthcare card if their income is on that sort of threshold. So have a look at that information as well. And one of the questions was around referring job seekers for financial advice. So where can we refer people to around that? So the first thing I'd say around that is as financial counsellors, we don't often use the word advice. And so because there's two different, very different sectors. So financial advising and financial planning is something that you pay for. So it's either on concession, commission or an upfront payment. And that's generally for people who have a lump sum or have huge amounts of savings. So they're looking at investment and much more, it's very different to what financial counsellors do. So if you're looking for someone referring job seekers for financial advice, then we wouldn't recommend anyone in particular around that. That's not our ethos in the financial counselling sector. So we would just refer someone to the Financial Planning Association or something like that, or looking more broadly around that. But if you're interested in job seekers and referring them for financial support or financial counselling, then that's where that National Debt Helpline might come into play. So you might ring up and talk to the helpline around your client, or get the client to give them a call and discuss their circumstances around that. And then the 4 agencies who do the financial counselling in the Geelong region, they're the ones that will be promoting on the website and having direct referrals to them around that. So just a word around that sort of advice. So if you're wanting advice, then that's more about shares and portfolios and things and investments. But if you're wanting support or counselling, then that's where our sector comes into play around that. So so that's the other question that came up. I think I've answered all the questions that were pre-sent to us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, hopefully, because I'm not great at this IT, but I am going to, actually, I might just show these next session screens, if that's okay, and then we'll come back to the questions if there's any. Georgia?
Thanks, Annette. Appreciate that. Hopefully everyone can hear me. That was absolutely amazing, Annette. Thank you so much. For me, you've reminded me that people from all walks of life have problems with money, and it's important not to bottle it up and try and deal with it alone. You've also provided us with some of those prompts on how to open up that conversation, which, you know, like you mentioned, can be awkward at times. Really appreciate your generosity in sharing your time and knowledge and professional advice over the 15 years. And I'm sure everyone will have a multitude of kind of takeaways from this presentation. And we'll all be hanging out for the website to go live in hopefully May. Before we let people go, as always, your feedback is important, and a short poll will soon appear. We'd really appreciate it if you could just take a couple of minutes to respond to the poll as it pops up as I speak. So I better answer it so I can see you all again. And I'd also like to suggest that if you've got any other ideas for future sessions or any suggestions for improving Exploring Barwon, please make use of our email address, which is on the screen now. Finally, I'm excited to share the next session with you, which will be in April, and the topic being family violence. What's new and what do you need to know? So the date of the session is Thursday the 28th at 10 a.m. We'll have registrations open shortly, and you'll see that come into your email boxes soon. And we do have a couple more minutes. So as people are completing the poll, I'd just like to finally thank everyone for joining us today. and just find out if there's any last questions in the chat that you'd like to make use of before we get on to our business today. So it's nice to see a few other faces come onto the screen. Thanks, Claire, for showing your video. Amanda. Are there any other questions people would like to ask Annette while we've got her? I know I've got her on my list to approach to see if she's interested and available to come to Justice to share some of that information with our staff as well. If not, we might be able to give back a couple of minutes in your day. Once again, Annette, if there's nothing else, I really want to just share my appreciation and the appreciation of everyone that's come today. That was fabulous. Thank you.
No problems. Thank you.
And have a lovely day. See you all.
Bye.